one thing we know for sure is everyone's going to die at some point. So while you're alive, I think like using your body, experiencing like all the senses, ingraining yourself as much as possible in like full bodied experiences, from like eating delicious food to running, swimming, being just human is really something that I value very highly.
Ciara, welcome to the One Away Show.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be joining you, Brian.
Stoked to have you here. So Ciara, what is the one away moment that you want to share with us today?
So I think my one away moment was not so much of a lightning bolt as a realization. And that realization is that from growing up in a really small village in Donegal and experiencing lots of travel, loads of different places in the world, my realization is that a small village in Donegal and a train car in the middle of Siberia are actually the same place. And I will explain why. So growing up in rural Ireland, I learned that community is kind of a self-regulating, loving, and sometimes frustratingly close-knit ecosystem. And obviously growing up where it was very like supported, it was super close, everyone knew each other. I thought I kind of wanted to escape that to see the world. So I studied languages, I traveled across continents, but whether I was in, Beijing or Mongolia or Tashkent or Barcelona, I kept seeing the same thing, which was that people just want to be understood and enabled to do their best. So that curiosity turned into a mission that I'm very passionate about to this day. And I realized I didn't just want to see the world, I wanted to connect it. So my one away was realizing that my love for global community was just a larger version of the love that I learned in my own backyard.
Wow. First off, very cool. I had no idea you had such an extensive travel background growing up, but makes sense that you've carried that through in your day-to-day as you've grown up a bit. Tell me this, though, Ciara. You said something really interesting about people just want to be understood and enabled to do their best. As you were growing up and traveling and bopping back and forth from different places, did you feel misunderstood in that process by the world around you? Like, talk to me about your journey to belonging, so to speak, as you saw the world.
Yeah, so I'll start with maybe like the Donegal Foundation. So where I grew up is a very rural and quite isolated place in Ireland because it is just in the northwest, almost in Northern Ireland, but the Republic of Ireland. So on the border of Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And it's often kind of known as like the forgotten county because it's almost closed off by essentially a different country, but it's not. And in that, we actually moved, my family moved there from England. I was born in Liverpool. And that is the kind of place where everybody knows everybody. Everyone knows their grandparents, their heritage of each neighbor. And we'd come in as like foreigners, even though, it was like a stone's throw away. Liverpool is really close to Ireland. And my mum is Irish and my dad is English. But going into that kind of really close-knit small community and then trying to like find a place there and to fit in and to belong was like a very formative experience, I think, of, both the best aspects of what it means to have a close-knit, strong community, but also the struggles you can experience being like different or othered per se.
Interesting. So it sounds like where you moved, it showed you really what community, family, belonging was all about, seeing generations kind of packed together under the same, roof and so to speak. But you, in a way, were an outsider a bit looking in and trying to make sense of it all and like find your place within.
Yeah, in a sense, yes. And then I also feel like the kind of everything knows, everybody knowing everything about everyone vibe. Like there's this kind of like self-regulation to the two small communities like that, which in a way is like a safety net. Like I could roam around like pretty freely and go and like visit neighbors and not tell my parents like where I was because of that aspect. And I think that's something that we're kind of losing in today's world. But with that being like a self-regulating sort of process, it's also, there was also, when you're a teenager and you're rebelling and you don't want people to know what you're doing or where you're going, that was problematic because you can't get away with anything because everyone knows your business. So, while then that also felt like restrictive. So on the flip side of that, it felt like a restrictive thing. I think it also taught me that like that community as a safety net, you learn early on that when people kind of root for each other, they do better, right? Well, rooting for each other usually enables others to do better. And that's like a micro version of what I now build and we build with at Web Summit on a macro scale.
Super cool to hear the origins and some of the roots and just the way you connected to the world at a younger age. I think the parallel of rooting for each other and supported networks of knowing about people, I think is super true. And yeah, to bridge that gap to innovation and people building companies and at a global level, I think that's fascinating. So very cool. Now, question for you though, like, was it when you were going to all these different cultures, like before we get to the fully the Web Summit side, what did you learn about yourself of what it took to understand other cultures that were different from you, to connect and engage? Because right now you're doing that in all parts of the world, which we can get to, but it sounds like you had training, right, from a young age to go into, different, areas and just find ways to connect with people. Like tell me about that experience and then we can connect it later.
Yeah, I think I was very lucky to have like a very adventurous family. So my mom every summer would take, there's four of us, four kids, four of us across Europe in a camper van. And we'd go from like different countries, different campsites, experiencing like different cultures, people. And she would do that by herself, like also a very like strong formative figure for me to see that like she was just independently driving around where my dad had to stay home and work. But we had like 3 months holiday and she would take most of that to just navigate like foreign lands in this camper van with her kids. And that like moving from like the safety of Donegal, which was again, like you become ingrained in a place, but then experiencing kind of the curiosity of the world shows you that like your home can be mobile. If you have the right people with you, if you have like the right sort of support groups and networks, you can kind of find a home anywhere in the world. And I think that also like gave me the sense of like people just wanting to find, we have more in common than we have differences. And I think, in today's world, especially, that can be hard to remember. And given like the climate that we're in with a lot of like very intense relationships geopolitically. But I'm a super strong believer that we have much more in common than we do have differences. And that experience as like a kid traveling around like Europe also gave me like a sense of, even if you don't speak, every language, that desire to be understood. If you listen and engage, like it's actually, you don't need words a lot of the time. And that was really cool. So I feel like, traveling around in summers and then coming back to like Donegal, which again is like this really small rural place, it gave me like a yearning for the world, but then to be connect, not just see the world, but to connect to the wider world. And again, like with anywhere we'd go, you'd find people that you have things in common with, even if it's not obvious at first.
I mean, I wish I got hit the jackpot of a mom who just took us in the camper van for 3 weeks in the summer. I mean, my mom's pretty great, but there wasn't the free spirit in her to do that. So, it's a good mix, and I'm sure a fun way to go from structure and safety to eyes wide open. Super neat. So you, when you were like, let's just say like late teens and thinking about life ahead and thinking about what you wanted to do in the world and who you wanted to be when you grew up, like what was top of mind for you then?
I think it's an interesting question because I've never had like one vocation that was super clear that I wanted to do like X. I think I always knew that I absolutely wanted to leave Donegal and go to somewhere that had a much like more lively pulse. I think, that experience of traveling and like the taste of like curiosity of the world and all these different types of people made me really sure that I wanted to study languages in some capacity, and also culture and politics, economics, to give myself like a framework of like how things function. But that again, like the drive to kind of studying European studies, which I went on to do, wasn't just kind of about like the structure, the grammar. It was about then that like realization that most people just really desire to be understood, and that kind of skill set of having languages helping you to do that, was interesting. But I didn't have like a set idea of where that would lead me. I just knew that I wanted to have, global connections and an opportunity to be in the world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And yeah, I didn't mean it like you knew exactly that, but I do think the past and present inform the future in a lot of ways. And it's neat that you had the joy of discovery of new places and people and wanted to keep that going. So very cool. Well, now that we know a little bit about you and some of the core of Ciara and what makes her tick, and can you tell us a little bit about like your life today? I mean, I think you're in a pretty interesting role and get to see the world in a really special way. And I'd love for you to kind of share kind of how you fell into it and what you're doing now.
Yeah, I think, that kind of gives you a bit of context of like the why or like what drives me. But by having all these experiences, I'm really, really interested in the way that like human nature works and how often we can be kind of distracted by certain like noisy things or by inflammatory like rhetoric, or by like tribalism into like you're this and I'm that, like sort of people seeking self-definition that can be like harmful, but also could be a big advantage so that we find like that commonality again and like build bridges between each other. But also like on a global scale for like business leaders who want to, expand and take over international markets, like common threads are like the key to what I do now. So now I'm executive producer at Web Summit. I do like programming content, discussions, and talks. I had a background in TV, so I'd done a bit of that before. But I also build our communities. And I think, as someone who kind of tends to look past surface level to find those common threads, like that's a real superpower for what we try and do at Web Summit, which is essentially kind of give platform to people across the world to share ideas and build communities globally.
Yeah. One of the things I like about what you said was you're like driving the programming side of Web Summit. And I think I've always been, I think, probably very similar to you or in different ways similar. But if you create the right programming of content, the types of people that you can bring around and the connection between the two, I think is so powerful. Um, and it's like understanding what to program and how to program and how to draw and drive an audience around that. Were those skills? So, I mean, you grew up in different experiences. You want to see the world. You want to connect to different cultures, but understanding the drivers in different markets, understanding the content that drives certain people to connect and bond and have really meaningful conversations. I mean, you're at the center of that. How have you developed the skill set to maybe look at groups of people and say, oh, putting those people together would create a very dynamic conversation, and then the on the receiving end, the possibilities that could happen. Like, what's your magic for how you do that and bring that together?
That is a great question. I think that it kind of stems back to when I was in university and I was studying European studies, but I did two languages as well. And one of them was Spanish and one of them was Russian. And I figured that if I have English, Russian, and Spanish, that gives me like essentially a big swath of the world that I can directly communicate with to understand better, right? And like through learning those languages and experiencing those cultures, I actually did my year abroad in Moscow and had like a completely different experience than I expected to have, which was, Russia is the evil empire, essentially. And getting there and meeting people on the ground who were just like super normal, nice, and like driven and interesting folks, that it also, you know, led me to kind of question like, well, what is like true like debate and good rhetoric? Like, is it just like one perspective that's hashed out over and over again from different sides, or is there space to house the kind of conversations that like truly challenges the way that you think? But ultimately, again, like there's constant commonalities between people, even if you like vehemently disagree with them. So I think like from that experience, I worked in TV on a debate show. I like formulated those kind of debates that were, challenging but interesting, because ultimately I think like if there's space for kind of true discourse where you're challenged to think outside the box, or you're challenged to kind of question what we end up in a better place, and we end up with like more open minds, um, and it's better for business, it's better for outcomes. And so to give like people the chance to like truly debate in a like free and like non-judgmental space is like a core mission at WebSmith too. I think like our CEO and founder, like Paddy Cosgrave, he's very passionate about like true good discourse, and he gives us the space to program that kind of thing, and to take risks at times as well. So yeah, I think that's like a really like freeing way that we can have some real like consequence for the stuff that's discussed on stage. And then we're bringing together, 70,000 people in Lisbon. It's a massive audience. And beyond that, again, people come away with like thinking a little bit differently, or questioning what they might have known before or thought before. And that's a really big part of the mission that I think is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I think it takes a really interesting, like, I think what you're talking about, it's a global perspective. How do you bring people together in a way that is going to maybe make people a bit uncomfortable, maybe drive a bit of tension, but doing that in a way that's thoughtful, that's not just going to, make the stage happen in a way that connects the people speaking, but then the audience as well to walk away. I remember at the event we were at with Masters of Scale, there was the Patagonia CEO and the Chobani CEO.
Mm.
And to me, there was like this underlying political tension, but it created this like really interesting narrative arc in the conversation. And you could kind of, in my opinion, there's this subcurrent kind of trying to figure out what was going on. And when I remember after the event, I went up to the guy, Ryan, at the Patagonia, and I said to him, so what was going on with you guys? I said, there was something there. And he's like, yeah, like a little bit, but also that like we're very good friends. Like we hung out all day. And it was really interesting though to hear them on stage in like their most true form. So to, facilitate that, right, in the way you
Yeah.
described, I have to imagine it's just super neat.
Yeah, and at the same time, like, both of them have built like wildly successful companies, right? So like that's like the common thread. Like both of them are extremely successful business people in their own rights. And they can respect each other for that beyond what they might disagree on.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I have a question. I'm going to make you pull from the memory bank. So you put on events all around the world in your kind of flagship locations. When you look back at some of the events that you've done, what would you say is some of the top programming that you've put together, helped put together, and has left a mark on you on this day? When you look back at a Lisbon event or the event in South America, like what stands out and why?
I think that's a great question. Across the board, we've had some pretty like special moments. We've had like some very heated like crypto debates at the height of crypto. For example, we had like a session with Charles Hoskinson and Ben. Anyway, he was a critic, a harsh critic. Um, and he like there was a very harsh debate. Ben McKenzie, that was it. Ben McKenzie as well. There was a really harsh debate about like how they view, for example, crypto, and that was super interesting. And afterwards, like they absolutely did not get on, but like I think that was like an important like challenge and response to be had on stage. Also, we've had people like Al Gore come and talk about like climate in a very real and like direct way that's been really special. But beyond like the kind of headlining names, we've also had companies who've come and like taken part in our pitch competition, and like Revolut when they were nothing, which now is like a massive successful company, of course. And I think around AI, like we've had Jeffrey Hinton come and just kind of very openly share like his thoughts on where it's all going from the ethical perspective. Gary Marcus as well, and I think they're really interesting and important debates, especially in today's world, so that we consider like the full impact of like our drive to keep producing and keep innovating and keep technology, charging forward. And you can look at like the approach of Dario versus like Sam Altman, for example, and having the full picture before making any decisions is, I think, is something that is super important. A lot of the time we focused on from the governmental side as well, like dealing with and connecting to regulators. So new innovation, no one really knows what's going on. Connecting leaders within that space. So let's say like the top thought leaders and business people around like AI with those who are then trying to regulate it in government. And oftentimes you can have like a knowledge deficit there where either if the European perspective would be like knee-jerk regulation where it's like over-regulation, or from the American perspective, potentially like under-regulation. But those kind of conversations I think are really important because you've got solid outcomes that come after that. So I think anything around like AI and how we regulate it and how it's impacting the future with minds like Jeffrey Hinton and Gary Marcus has been like some of our best programming as of late, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think you're tapping into a very existential like nerve. I think a huge fear, a massive opportunity, depending on how you look at it, right? And I think if you're going to bring tens of thousands of people into an environment, you're going to want to, help them understand kind of that future, where it's all going. And also like, what's the scary side? What's not? And I mean, I think that it is a crazy world right now and it's changing so fast, and who knows? But with the way it's playing out, there's a lot of opportunity to be had and like things that can go terribly wrong. So, it's neat that you can tap into the nerve of like where the world is with technology in different locations all throughout the year. I think that's really special.
Yeah, I think the key thing is that we're talking about it and we're not just approaching it from like a single perspective. So like another really interesting trip that we had last year was that we went to China for almost a month, and we met with like every top Chinese company, all the leaders within like robotics, within like AI, within their like uniquely like open source approach to like building. And I think from doing that, I think that's another thing that we can tend to kind of get like shoeboxed into like just our own trajectory within the world of like the Western perspective per se. But like that was a really like super eye-opening experience of how far ahead like they are in certain spaces, and how impressive their cities are. I don't think there's any like cities in Ireland that would qualify as a tier 1 city in China, quite frankly, because our roads are super shit and transport is delayed all the time, and you can't use your phone to like tap onto Dublin bus, for example. Whereas like they're using like their faces and their palms to pay for stuff. So that was super interesting. And if you look at like other places like India, where like 11 Labs is expanding super rapidly because they primarily communicate by using voice messages. Like it's all voice driven. So there, when it's, language models that you need to like type into that we're all used to doing, typing into different like programs, it's not as relevant because actually everything's voice driven. So there's a really interesting, contrast in different places of how they're embracing technology and driving society forward with the use of technology. And I think that's good to remember when we get too high and mighty with our own level of progress.
Yeah, I think it's having perspective of where you came from, like your roots in Ireland, and clearly it's not on the level that you've risen to in your life. So you've kind of like bypassed where you're from. So it's kind of embarrassing, but I mean, it's also really exciting. But yeah, no, it's I can appreciate the perspective. So a question for you: you have seen the world at I mean, a lot of different levels. You've seen, like you said, the tier one cities. You've seen the cities that perhaps are up and coming. You've seen the best leaders. You've seen the people who are up and coming. What if Web Summit said to you, let's just say you were planning your 2028 calendar. I'm sure you guys plan a bit far out, maybe not, but I suspect. And they said, Ciara, you need to plan the next 4 events. You pick the cities and you have a kind of blank check, go do whatever you want. Like, where are you picking and what are topics of conversation? You don't need to speak topics of conversation. I'm curious where you'd pick city wise and why.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think honestly, I would just focus on BRICS at large. So like Brazil, India, definitely China, and Africa in a certain set, like different places in Africa as well, where I think the most exciting things are happening in those like hyper growth economies. And we actually have started, so we've got like our pillar events, which are like Lisbon, Doha, Vancouver, and Rio. And obviously they're taking like big chunks of our continents and represented in like slightly different focal points for each event. But we've actually just kind of started to build out a new form of event called Spotlight. And Spotlight's like a 1 day event that showcases really exciting like emerging ecosystems. We did our first one in Uzbekistan in Tashkent. We've just completed another one in Brazil in the state of Paraíba. And that will be something going forward that we'll do more of. So giving people opportunities to experience underappreciated or overlooked ecosystems, where there's a lot of really exciting things going on that we might not know about. So that will be a new bridge per se that will also be, giving access to the Web Summit community to come and experience potentially a lesser known ecosystem. And that's super exciting. I think we can get to many corners of the globe with our new Spotlight product.
Yeah, it's neat. I mean, you can kind of ride the brand into different corridors that interest you and meet all the people in the world that you want. So, okay, let's talk about like the life of Ciara, like personally to a degree. Like you're in these cities, and let's just say you have downtime. You have time completely away from work, and you can go explore and do whatever you want. Like, what's a day in the life, and how does it, connect or not connect at all to the things you care about in terms of helping the world be seen or not seen.
Yeah, I really love sports and food.
Okay.
So, if I have any downtime, I would usually try and either like do a hike, experience like the nature of a place. I grew up by the sea, which was in a very, very beautiful place. Arguably, I'm sure people will not want to hear this, but Donegal is the most beautiful county in Ireland, everyone. That is not a hot take, that's just a fact. It's super nice. And I grew up like in the sea, like surfing, swimming, love hiking, lots of mountains. So I would do something to that degree. And then I just also really like how food connects people. So I'd go and like try local cuisines where I can. And yeah, then just have fun, like go to some bars, have a dance.
Okay. All right. Nature, dancing, sports. Any favorite sports that like you are excited about in different parts of the world?
I really like tennis, and so does Paddy. He's very, very good at it. So that's definitely tennis is one. I also grew up riding horses, so I really like equestrianism and equestrian sports, and swimming, boxing, a lot. I do CrossFit.
Yeah, I thought when you like got on screen, you're coming from like a Pilates studio or some like hit class studio. I'm like, where is she? Apparently, it's a music studio. But anyways, yeah. All right, so pretty dynamic taste is what you're saying.
Yeah, just life, man. Like all the flavors that are available to us as human beings. So I think any time, like I have a very, maybe everyone does, but I have a strong sense of, the timeline. One thing we know for sure is everyone's going to die at some point. So while you're alive, I think like using your body, experiencing like all the senses, ingraining yourself as much as possible in like full bodied experiences, from like eating delicious food to running, swimming, being just human is really something that I value very highly.
Sounds good. Sounds like we're pro-human as much as we are an accelerant of technology.
Exactly. And like, yeah, accelerating technology in service of
Humanity.
experiencing as much as possible as a human.
It seems like you are out and about at different events. You get to pull from dinners that you might organize for friends to tech conference events to, your local swimming league. Like, how do you think about like events and that you go to or participate in, and how does that inform the programming, the event structure on a global scale? I mean, do you
Yeah,
have, yeah.
I think, and this is something that actually so we have everything that we do in WebSmith is like in-house. So our software team built the app like themselves, like everything is like self-built, self-driven. So the question here, and this is like the critical sort of thought point, is like when an event gets so big, how do you connect 70,000 people and make them feel like there's place for them and that it's a valuable experience, right? Like, how do you maintain that level of like meaningful connection in a massive crowd of people? And I think our app has become very sophisticated with like really brilliant people working on it to curate like their experience based on, again, like commonality, like what we share and have in common. And it's a really good way to like filter your experience to be able to find space at the event where you have a sense of like belonging and like productivity and find your people. So that's like a big kind of bonus, and I think informs by experiencing a lot of events where you also go to loads of events. I'm sure you've had the same thing where you walk in somewhere and it's like, oh, what am I doing here? Or although, you always can chat to people and it's fine, but like a lot of the times when it's hard to like find like, okay, well, what's the purpose? Like people want to be there with a purpose. But I think what we do super well is like seeing that village in the crowd. So having that like village come together out of 70,000 people, of like 100 people who are really passionate about golf, or 50 people who are really passionate about sourdough bread, and they exchange their ideas beyond what they're working on as a job. I think in general, like, we're super multifaceted beings, and there's so much that connects us, and like so much that we're passionate about, and it's always really fun to find someone that has your similar passions that might not be work related. So yeah, I think we do that side of things really well. And I think that's something that we've also built up over years of experiencing different kind of events where the connections may not have felt so meaningful. But it's something that I think we're very proud of doing.
Yeah, that's super cool. I like that a lot, and I went on the Web Summit app, and I noticed like you could pick different interests. Like it was actually like very thoughtfully done, at least online. I haven't seen the mobile version, but I was like, there has been some thought put into it. Like you clearly have certain sections and setups, and it's like seems very organized for such a large scale. And I do think your question of how do you make and curate meaningful connection across 70,000 people is like an amazing question to like answer, ask, understand, and like also very hard to do. And to your point, yeah, there are many times you walk in, like a good event is very hard to recreate. It's extraordinarily hard to recreate. And at the size and scale that you're doing it, I can't even imagine what goes into it. Okay, I want to ask you about your upcoming event in Vancouver, but one more question on that. For those listening and are just curious, like produce an event with tens of thousands of people multiple times a year across the entire country. Like, what are the things that someone from the outside looking in would just have no idea of, like what it takes to do well and produce and bring together, that they might be mystified to just hear of what goes into it? How would you answer that?
I think things like we have an unbelievably talented production team, led by Craig Becker, who came from like the theater world and did like concert programming for like Madonna. And the kind of running of the ship in terms of the production. So like we build the event from scratch. Like we go into a venue and build everything that you see from scratch. It's super impressive. And the production value is so high, like from like the staging to like cohesiveness between like the style of the font on like the signage. Like it's the details. I think the devil is in the details. And people would be shocked to, realize how much detail is thought of in a very intense and curated way.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I believe it. I mean, look, I think good media, good production, good storytelling, good all of it. It really sets the stage and gives people eye into how it's going to be. So,
Yeah, even things like, if I can remember like correctly, like things like, lining time, like how long it takes to get a badge at Web Summit is something that's been like rigorously thought through over years. How long it takes for someone to print a badge to then the attendee to receive the badge, like that's an attendee experience that's been like debated intensely within the company before achieving like a 5-second turnover. So that like the whole experience of being at Web Summit is like a very fine art.
yeah. Wow. It's amazing. Experience design has always interested me. I like love experience design for like a group of 150 people personally. And like the idea of like creating a 150 person event, I've done like many times and or like, well, like 3 to 500 I've done once. Like I like events, but thinking past that amount is just like like from a level of scale. Like systems, a lot of systems would break. You can't bootstrap spreadsheets together much further. But anyways, yeah, I think everything you're saying is pretty spot on. What I want to ask, you have an event coming up in Vancouver, from my understanding, in May. Tell us about the event. What are you most excited about? Why Vancouver? Just give us the down low and let's promote the heck out of it. This is your chance right now.
My chance. Okay. Well, I think first of all, Vancouver is one of our most beautiful locations, because it's right on the waterfront. It's a stunning view into like the bay. So it's a super beautiful, beautiful place. We're gonna have such an exciting lineup. So we have around 35,000 people joining us in Vancouver, from like founders, investors, innovators, defining the future of tech. I think what makes Vancouver special is we've got two brand new tracks that are unique to Vancouver. One is called Film Summit, the other is Gaming Summit. So we've got a very strong voice and presence from those two worlds for this event, which separates it from the other events because we don't have that exact trajectory for other events. But it's lining up to be one of our best years. We've got a super amazing speaker lineup. People like Gabor Mate or Andrew McKechnie, who's the head of business creative at OpenAI. We've got like Max Levchin. We've got president of Sony Imageworks, Warner Brothers Animation, Amazon Prime Video, Mike Minton, CPO of Twitch. Like very interesting crowd of speakers who are going to be talking obviously about different issues within their industries and the vision for the future. But I think that, yeah, like the city of Vancouver is super beautiful. It's a really nice place to be. It'll be really fun to have like our North American contingent happen there. So it's lining up to be a really special and interesting event. The speakers themselves, and then everyone who's going to come and, make the experience worthwhile in terms of the wider attendee list.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, Brian.
I mean, I'm gonna trek along and make the adventure. It's gonna be amazing. I actually booked, knowing I had my thing. What?
You're gracing our stage.
I'm trying to prove my worth as a moderator here. See if I pass the test. You could kick me out after and say I don't pass, but I think we've done a good job. It's funny. I remembered we were chatting today, like late last night. I was like, oh shit, I gotta book my stuff. So I did this morning, and I got this like epic Airbnb on the waterfront. It like overlooks everything. It was like amazing. And then, anyways, and then I got the flights, and I was like, oh, I'm like, well, should I stay the weekend and do some hiking? And anyways, I booked out Friday, but then I was like, I'll get flight insurance, then maybe I'll stay, and we'll see. So here we are. But I'm stoked.
You should. I think that's the thing that I haven't gotten fully like a chance to take advantage of is the hiking and the mountainous areas around Vancouver. It's all super beautiful. lots of people say it's really fun to take, like, those water planes that can like land on water. Don't know what you call them, but take a plane like over the surrounding areas because it's just a stunning view to behold.
Yeah. Well, I'm stoked. I've always wanted to go, so someone made it possible. Thank you. But no, I think I was checking it out. I think you got some amazing talk tracks planned, and if you're listening to this, you should definitely go and make it happen. We'll see you there.
Yeah, definitely come and join us and experience the connection.
Great. Well, Kira or Ciara, no, I'm just kidding. Kira, what are the things that I have missed, or if you want to bring us home on one note or something that you want to share that would be just that I missed to ask you about? Like, how do you want to close out here?
I think maybe we can just close out by, acknowledging that we have a very kind of dubious future ahead of us in terms of what's happening in the wider world, and that if we kind of remember as people, as humans, as like dwellers of planet Earth, that we have more in common than we have in differences, like more in common than things worth fighting about or fighting over. I think that's an important takeaway, and the more connections we can make to one another, the better it is for society, the better it is for like that global village, and the more bridges that we can build, the better, from my perspective.
Beautiful way to close out here. Thanks for being a global connector of people across the world and all that you do to drive innovation forward. Ciara, thanks so much. Where can people find Web Summit, you reach out, buy tickets? Tell us.
People can find me on LinkedIn. I'm open to all connections, so please find me, follow me. I'll keep everyone informed with our plans there. Find Web Summit through our various channels, social media. I'm sure I'll send you the links and we can share with anyone interested in following up. But yeah, I'm just really excited to keep going and driving our mission forward. So please, anyone who's interested in sharing a story, in experiencing a new market, in, driving innovation forward on the global scale as well as local scale. And if there's anyone who can come and transform Dublin's public transport systems, I'll be eternally grateful. Thank you.
That's right. And to leave us the best place in Ireland is what again for the show notes?
And everyone should come to Donegal.
How do you Donegal?
Donegal.
Okay, spell that to close this out properly.
Donegal. Also known as the most beautiful place in Ireland.
You're pronouncing it Dunigall something. Anyways, that works. We'll make sure we get it right. Ciara, thanks so much. This was a joy.
Thank you so much.